All right. Well, welcome back. I'm John Swaino,
I'm Dave Tenney.
and we are Two Beards in a Bible. We are looking into the scriptures here this day, and we're in Matthew chapter 6. Dave's going to start reading at verse 19.
It says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth or I got to start that over because you do want to lay up for yourself treasures in heaven. It says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also."
All right. Quite a bit of meat on that bone, just in that little section there.
So, I think the first thing we talk about is this idea of laying up treasures on earth. And man, that's a tough one, because, it seems like, that's where we're like wired to accumulate stuff.
Right.
I don't know why that is. I know that, I've got things I don't need. Let's just put it that way.
Right.
I have over 10 tractors. I don't need them. You know?
Right. Yeah, and that's that is, like you said, the way that we're wired. I mean, when my wife and I moved into this house, there's quite a bit of closet space, and we thought we'll never fill it. Well, it's full.
How did that happen?
and it just happens, and you don't even think about it. But then you just keep accumulating, and we talked in the last episode about just the Lord in the model prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Not worrying about those things in the days to come. But we tend to, stock up the pantry. We tend to stock up on things and save for those rainy days, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. And we're kind of get to that when we talk about the heart here in a minute.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of this, as with a lot of these things, it talks about our attitude towards things.
Yeah.
And he talks about our heart later on. But if you think about, things we buy, and I've used this example a million times, but it doesn't matter. Pick the item that you like, and you get it, and you think it's the greatest thing, and then like 5 years later, it's either in the junkyard or it's in a drawer somewhere where we don't know where it's at.
Yeah.
That now this thing is just nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I bought my truck in 2010, and it's an old truck, 1985, and it was fresh from Florida when I bought it, and very rust-free underneath. Yeah. But then as I've driven it these past 10, going on 11 years, just a little bit in the salt and so on, rust has gotten in there, and you start to see on the sheet metal that there's some rust showing itself there. So no matter how hard you think you're preserving something, in the end, all these things, all these physical things are going to go away.
And can you take any of them with you?
No. I mean, the pharaohs in Egypt should be proof of that.
Yeah. They've got what is it? King Tut. That's the like one of the very, I think maybe the only totally intact tomb they ever found, because most of the time, robbers got in and stole everything. But, King Tut was not like, he wasn't that big of a deal. He was only king for a short period of time, yet the amount of treasure in there was unbelievable.
Right.
And scale that up for what some of the other, other pharaohs would have had.
They even put a boat in there to go across the one of the rivers that they were going to come across, and all sorts of things. Yeah, that they were planning on needing these physical things.
Yeah, they had a box in there that they put their organs in it. I think it was called a esophagus or something like that.
Okay.
I can't remember what they called that, but that was some religious thing they had.
Yeah.
They had to preserve their organs. But all of those things, we store them up for no reason.
Right.
You ever been to an auction?
Yeah.
There's somebody's stuff they worked their whole life for, and it's just randomly being sold off to the highest bidder.
Right. Yeah. In fact, this last year I helped with a friend of mine kind of liquidating her estate. She was terminal with cancer, and she had a lot of things that she had accumulated, really over 3 households through her lifetime. And she needed to get rid of some things and put things in order. And it is shocking. There are some of the things that, were worth quite a bit of money at one time, and now we're being sold for just pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. And that's just the way life goes.
Right.
So rather than us putting all our efforts into that,
Right.
So Jesus offers us a better way to do this. He says, rather than laying up for yourself all these things on earth, he says, lay up for yourself treasures in heaven.
Right.
Because those things are actually safe up there. And, he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be. And I don't know if you've ever done this. Probably not, because you're such a much better person than I am.
Oh, right.
But I've sometimes sat and listened to a sermon in church, and I'm thinking about where we're going for lunch, or or what I'm going to do when I get home.
Right.
Because I don't have my mind in the right place.
Right.
And
that's it. When we think about our heart, I've heard it termed that we need to think of our heart as our Bible heart. It's not our blood pump.
No.
It's where our consciousness is.
Yeah.
And when we just let's use the example of someone with a rather padded and healthy stock portfolio. And when you wake up every morning and you check the numbers on Wall Street, you see how the Dow is doing or whatever, and you look at those numbers and you're focused on that. That's where your treasure is. You're constantly thinking about that, and you can't focus on other things. If that's how many people and this happened in the Great Depression in the 20s and the 30s, and it's happened again in more recent times, where people that had all their treasure on earth in stocks, bonds, and shiny things, when those things were in peril, they committed suicide.
Oh yeah, people jumped off of buildings.
Right, because they had no hope beyond those things.
In my household, I don't deal with any money. My wife takes care of all of that stuff. And I remember it was a teenager asked me how much money I made, and I'm like, I don't really know.
Right.
But I do know this. I keep getting lunch every day, and that's all I really am worried about.
Right.
So we must be, I kind of got a rough idea of what we have, but I mean, I don't get mired down in the details of that, because my wife's, she's a real number-oriented person. We first got married. This is tax time right now. And I'll tell you what, I always went to H&R Block and got my taxes done. And they were really simple, but I mean, that's not something I'm good at, is filling out forms. Right. And then she said, oh, I want to take this over. And I'm trying to talk her out of it. I'm like, oh, these tax forms are horrible. And for her, it was easy.
Right.
Right. But, we got to make sure that, wherever we're laying our treasures up, they're in the right place.
Right.
So Jesus is going to have some more commentary on this as we go through chapter 6. Why don't you read 22 and 23?
All right. 22. I'm getting the right side of the page here. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? You know what?
I think this, in the context, this is what I think is interesting. So if you take that scripture out of its context, we could make up all kinds of crazy things to go there. But he just got done talking about where you should have put your heart. Now he's talking about what you should focus on.
Right.
And it's basically going along with the same thing. He's talking about, our eye. That's the thing that lets us see things.
Right.
It also speaks to the idea of, what things we treasure. I think it goes along with that exact same thought.
Right.
And when we focus on the wrong things, that's why it says when your eye is bad. When we start focusing on things that are not godly, then we're in darkness.
And how do you put things into your heart? It's through your eyes,
It is.
your ears, and you really, I guess you could think of it as the mind's eye. Where are you focusing that concentration on? If your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness.
He's talking about, so now he goes on in verse 24. He says, no one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. So all of this whole section here we're reading, he's talking about laying up for yourself treasures. So he talks about mammon. That's just another word that means riches.
Right.
But, he speaks a truth here that, you cannot wholeheartedly go two different ways.
Right.
Yeah,
and if you try to straddle the line, and I suppose, I know I can think back to times in my life where, I was trying to straddle two different lines and trying to walk one way here and another way over here, and that just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
And you begin to, as it says, you begin to hate the one.
Yeah.
Or you serve the one and forget the other, and that's where, but that's just such a simple truth. We gloss over that, but it is just that simple.
It all goes back to where are you laying your treasures at?
Yeah.
All of these things point back to that first thing he said. So in verse 25, I'll have you read. Can you read through 34?
Yeah.
The one thing I find interesting, this is like a Bible reading thing. The first word in verse 25 is therefore. So Jesus gives these instructions, and then he kind of just wraps it up. He goes, now I'm going to tell you.
Because of that.
Yeah, because of that.
Yeah.
So go ahead, John. Tell us where it's at.
All right. Verse 25, therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? So why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Now if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble.
I think I just heard you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the address. Write it down.
Yes.
Matthew 6:34.
Yeah. So he tells us first, he says, don't worry about your life. And all of the things that are going on in your life, and he says, don't spend your time worrying about those things.
Right.
That's another. That can be tough to do that sometimes.
Right.
Because especially I know for me, sometimes at work, I can get caught up in whatever problem we're having at work, and then I lay awake at night thinking about that problem.
Yeah, it really kind of goes back again to, maybe I just lost my thought. The worrying about all these things that are riches and so on that we talked about a little bit ago. and we tend to worry so much about, the outcome of things that we do here in our lives, and thinking about, maybe our friend, family member, brother or sister is sick, maybe terminally so, and you think, well, that's awful. That's like the worst thing that can happen is that you can die. But, to live as Christ, to die as gain.
Yes.
We're told in the scriptures. And so if we have focused on heavenly things, if we've laid up our treasure in heaven, not here on earth, then according to the Lord's will, his people are going to be saved. His will has nothing to do with those earthly treasures. Those are all going to be burned up. And so everything's going to be okay.
It's interesting. I do a lot of work with construction projects and those sorts of things. And, some guys have the attitude that they're going to do a job so it's going to last for eternity, and of course it never does.
Right.
And one guy I used to work with said, he goes, you don't want to do things too good. He goes, because then the next generation won't have any work.
Right.
So you don't want to build things too good.
And even those things that have lasted a long time. We mentioned the Egyptians a moment ago. Think about the pyramids and, how long they've been there. They've been there for a very long time.
Oh, yeah.
Not an eternity, but they've been there for a very long time. And you can see the weathering. You can see that. I even watched, being a documentary junkie as I am, I watched one not too long ago that talked about the Sphinx and how they believe that it had a different form at one time, and this is like the second or third iteration of what it is, what we see now, because it's so non-proportional,
Yeah.
and so that it had some other form in times gone by, and it's been whittled down and recarved over time, and it's whittling away. I mean, it's been repaired.
Yeah.
To still be standing there. It's had help.
Yeah.
Along the way.
I mean, think about in Jesus' time, Jerusalem, this grand city on a hill with these massive walls, and
I tell you, not one stone will be left on top of the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
It's all gone.
Yeah.
I think that's what Jesus is basically. That's why he talked all about these treasures and the things you put your energy into. And he's like, don't worry about that stuff. Don't make that the focus of your life. Mm-hmm. I think is the gist of what he's saying.
Right.
God, and he goes on to say, God knows you need things to live.
Right.
And he talks about, I think he talks about Solomon. Mm-hmm. And I think I've read that even today they believe that Solomon was probably the richest man that ever lived.
Right.
If you could put it into today's dollars, he'd be the richest man in the world.
Right.
He had anything he wanted.
Right. Yeah.
He had 700 wives.
Right.
How could you even remember their names?
How would you ever figure out what was for dinner?
Oh, my word.
Right. So, and all of that, and all of those things, and we're told that even the birds of the field are not, or he wasn't arrayed as well as the birds of the field.
Yeah.
And not to worry about those things.
Yeah.
And we, mankind we've always been kind of short-sighted concerning those things.
Yeah, he talks about the grass being thrown into the furnace, and that's really what happens. I think about I've renovated my old farmhouse. I'm the third person I believe to totally renovate this house, and I've wiped out all the work that's been done before.
Right.
But I wonder about the guys that worked before me. Thought, oh, this is going to last for 100 years.
Right.
But it didn't.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
We gotta, make sure that we're focusing on the right things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we move on to judging. Matthew 7. I think we might be able to get through just that little section with the few minutes remaining.
Are you want me to
Matthew
read?
7, the first 6 verses. Yeah, go ahead.
It says, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with what measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and do not consider the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite! First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give what is holy to the dogs, or cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces. Okay, we'll stop right there.
All right.
Was I supposed to read 7?
No.
Okay,
No,
good.
Good. Yeah. So, from that, we people often talk about judging.
Don't judge, John.
Exactly.
Don't judge.
You can't judge me. Yeah. And so what kind of judgment are we told that we shouldn't do?
The idea, I believe, because he talks about, I say, John, you need to lose a little weight.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I mean, you got to first look at yourself.
Right.
There's a lot of things that, we can look at, and I've always felt this way, that we are quick to judge other people, but we're not so quick to look at ourselves and say,
right. It's painful to look at yourself and say, I need to change that.
yeah,
It's a hard thing to do, even with just little simple things. No one likes to be told that they've been wrong.
Yeah.
And then you add a little bit more emotion to that. No one likes to be told that their family has been wrong. For so many years. The things that people have done going on before them have been wrong. But of course we don't want to be hypocritical. We need to. It really kind of comes down to understanding. Kind of understanding where people are coming from, and also we're not to judge eternally. It's not our job to say, well, you're going to hell.
I'm writing you off.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not our job. That is the Lord's job. But what sorts of things can we judge in our lives?
Well, the idea is that, that somebody put forth is we're not supposed to judge each other is just insane. Mm-hmm. Right? So if I know my neighbor, he's got some problem and he's violent, maybe I judge, well, if he's drunk, maybe I should not go over there.
Right.
Because maybe something bad will happen.
Right.
We're supposed to judge situations. Mm-hmm. Without that, you're risking your own safety.
Right. And we can also, we can look into the Word and we can judge that we should or shouldn't do certain things. And we can judge that, if I or somebody else does this or that, which is contrary to the will of the Lord, that God's not going to be happy about that.
Right.
And that's not us judging them. That's just us looking into the Scriptures and understanding, the history that we're given with the Lord and how He feels about people that go against, and how He deals with people that go against His will.
Yeah, if you see me doing something wrong, let's say you notice, Dave's going to the bar.
Right.
Is it your job to say something to me?
Yeah.
It is. Yes, it is.
And here's the thing. We because it's painful, human beings equate that kind of situation with hate or malice. But really, it's the most loving thing we can do for one another is to spur each other on and say, hey, look, you've stepped off the path there. Be careful.
Yeah.
Let me help pull you back.
Yeah.
And that's something that is a loving action, and may not be comfortable. But,
it never is.
Right. But it is what we're commanded to do.
Yeah, I remember when I was first became a Christian, and I did used to like to drink quite a bit, and I looked at this piece of land, and the neighbor that next to that land, he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He goes, want to have a beer? I'm like, sure. So I have a beer with him, and turns out that this guy knew some friends of mine from church.
Okay.
And I go to church the next Sunday, and this lady comes to me and she goes, "Oh, I heard you met so and so." I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "I heard you had a beer with him too." She didn't say anything else. Didn't need to.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's precisely the thing that we should do for each other.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any. She didn't pin you to the wall and beat
No.
you. She was just pointing out. Kind of.
Yeah, it just kind of nudging you along.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
and I think she understood I was, I was a beginner.
Right. Yeah. And as we get to the section here where it talks about the blind leading the blind, and if the blind lead the blind, they'll both fall into the ditch.
Absolutely. Well, John, I think we've about covered it for today.
Well, and that wraps it up then.
Yeah.
Thanks for looking into the scriptures with me, and thanks for joining in with us. And we hope that, of course, this has been a time that you can say has been well spent. And if you have any other questions about the things that you've heard, by all means, reach out to us, and we would love to study further with you. You'll find our contact information on our page. So thanks again for joining in with us, and Lord willing, we'll see you next time.